All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Blue Oval Podcast. Yes, it is me, Garrett Zatlin, doing the intro today, which means there's no Ben Weissel. I know everyone's very upset that he has a whole family and kids to attend to, but no worries. We do have a filler in for Ben today. Actually, his former teammate and now a TSR writer on the D1 women's side is Finn Burney. Finn, how you doing, man?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you?
Phenomenal. I am just coming back from a lake weekend with a bunch of buddies, and we're also coming off of our D1 XC Top 50 preseason rankings. So I am always tired, as all of our listeners know, but as I'm sure you know as well. But before we get into it today, I think we don't have any new ratings and reviews, I don't think. So Apple, Spotify, let's get those ratings and reviews up. I think we stagnated on all of that. But Finn, what we're going to do today is we're going to do some review of our top 50 rankings. We're not going to give too much away, but I'm going to ask us a few questions. We'll go back and forth, and we'll get your expertise. You obviously worked on the women's rankings. You had some input as well with the order there. So that's just your kind of background, but you're pretty familiar with the rest of the rankings. So
Yes.
I'll let you start. Where do you want to start first? Do you want to start the men's side or the women's side?
I think since I had a bit of a helping hand on them, let's start with the women's side.
Excellent. Okay. So on the women's side, we have 50 names. We have some just missed names. When you're looking through that list, even if it's writing your portion or somewhere else, who were the names or maybe the name, whatever it may be, where you're looking at them and you go, I think they were robbed of a ranking, or I think they could have been a few spots better. Were there any names that stuck out to you?
Um, yes, I think for me, funny enough, this was actually in my section. Um, Kaylee McCabe,
Mm,
I think, and I completely understand why she was ranked in this position. But I think for someone that in 2021 finished third at national cross country, and last year, so 2022, previous fall, she was undefeated all the way up until Stillwater. Admittedly, she came 24th, which is a placing that's very good, but for someone of her caliber, isn't quite up to scratch. I think that's what really hampered her rankings. And admittedly, her kind of proportion of her season, like the schedule is fairly weak, but that's through no fault of her own. Like no athlete can have a say in exactly what their schedule is. But I think that positioning is good, but not great. And I think considering how good her track season was this year, she set PRs across the board. I think she was 850 for 3K, 412, 1500, and then she came third in the steeplechase this year. I think for me, I would have liked to have seen her a couple of spots higher. But then at the end of the day, a lot of weight is held on how they did nationals, and her nationals race wasn't quite as good as we've seen her previously.
yeah, that's a very fair point because like you look at where she's at, and it's a good spot, but it's not where she probably should be, like just based on what we've known about her previously. So like you take her natural talent, which we all know about, versus okay, well, yes, she was undefeated, but she didn't race at Joe Piani, she didn't race at pre nationals, she didn't race at Nutty Comb, she didn't race at Panorama Farms, right? And you start going back and forth, you're like, well, where did she race, right? And it's kind of hard. She did race at Big 12s, right? I think Big 12s is a little hard to gauge just because I think Oklahoma State probably puts more emphasis on the team battle rather than the individual side. That's just speculation. But I agree. I think it's a very tough middle ground. I think in retrospect, I agree with you. I probably would have wanted to see her higher. I see why we did it. Um, but I agree with you. That was very difficult. Any other name in particular that maybe stood out to you?
Um, Again, this one for me is a very difficult person to rank. Uh, Incoming Alabama, Doris Cherub.
Mm-hmm.
So when somebody hasn't run in the NCAA, it's very difficult to place where they're going to be. Um, there's a lot of changes happening, and for someone that's like come to the States for the first time, like you have to adapt to the racing style. It's very different to what people are used to. But for someone that can run 1440, which absurd.
5K road race. 5K road race, historically
Yes,
fast. Should note
yes.
that, but yes.
But I must say that for me is, I think that holds a lot of weight. And where she's at is a great spot for someone that's kind of like unknown. We don't know too much about her. Um, but I do think she should be up a couple slots. And also, in addition to her 1440, it must be said that she ran a 9:35 steeplechase.
Hmm.
And from what we've gathered, I believe it was in Nairobi, which is just under 6,000 feet up. And if you calculate that using altitude conversion, comes out at roughly 9:14. Now,
So
either way, if
ridiculous.
exactly, it's absolutely bonkers. So that would be an NCAA record, I believe, or
Yep.
just off.
Yeah, you
Um,
get it.
so either way, if you want to say it's a 9:35 on its own, that's fantastic. That's like battling the very top we already have in the NCAA. So I think going off those alone, we should have ranked her slightly higher. And I think another thing as well is that funny enough, I wrote the section when we spoke about Amy Bunnage. She's coming
Yes.
in from Australia, newcomer. I think the way we valued her coming in, I think we should have done the same with Cherub. I think both of them are very unknown coming in, but their times are phenomenal. So I would have liked to have seen Cherub get a bit more leeway. But at the end of the day, you have no idea how someone coming in is going to be. So I'm very, very excited to see how she goes, because we could have someone that's contending for a national title if things go to plan for her. So very, very exciting.
Great points, and I hate how right you are because now it makes me think like, maybe we should have bumped him up. Maybe we should have given them some leeway. I guess for me, the thing with Cherop is that I struggled. If I'm just going to be honest, I think there's a lot of questions a lot of times with a lot of overseas athletes from Africa and from Kenya because you can't always validate the times, and then when you can validate the times, it comes in like instances of that 5K road race in France where it's historically fast. It I struggle to put a little bit of emphasis on that 1440. I don't know how much stock we should put in there, but is it still insanely fast? Yes, of course. And that's where I'm just not sure. You're right. If we're gonna give Amy Bunnage, I think the the rank that we did over Cherop, I think you're right. I think it's fair. I think Cherop probably deserved something a little higher. I'm trying to think about a few other names of my own. Frankly, you stole a lot of them. If I'm just going to be honest, I think I probably wanted to see someone like Bila Chepkiri a little higher. I know you know that I'm a big fan of her. I think her upside's
Yes.
phenomenal. A lot more experience now in year two. I think her NCAA race from last fall was a complete fluke. Um, so that's kind of where I was at there. There's a few women in the top. Like I think we argued about Siona Chisholm, like what she could do. I think there was a few debates about how high like Emily Covert could go, but we don't really know what her status is right now. So those were kind of my names. When you take a closer look at the women's rankings, however, was there any name where you're like, seemed a little high? Seemed not maybe not necessarily you want to kick her out of the rankings, but maybe you looked at it, you go, that seems just the slightest bit high.
Um, that is a very good question. I think it was a difficult one for going. Funny enough, going back to Bunnage, it's one of those that like I like where she's at, but maybe she is a couple spots too high. But it's one of those things. If you look at what she's got coming in on paper, she's faster than Natalie Cook was coming
Right.
in, and we saw what Natalie Cook did. And also, I was trying to research this. She ran faster in high school than Caitlin Tui, and then if you're going on that kind of trajectory, like where are we going to see her? So again, it's like I think we fared pretty well ranked her, but then maybe like going off what we've just spoke about with Cheryl, maybe actually having her a bit further back would have been the more like cautious approach. But it depends what you want to give weight to, really. Um,
Yeah. But you're saying are you arguing that she should be ranked higher or that she should be ranked further back? Because it sounds like you're saying she should be
may
ranked higher.
Funny enough, so when I wrote them, right at the end, it got a slight ranking change, and I think where I wrote originally,
Mhm.
I would have kept her there. But
Okay,
that
interesting.
we're talking like minor spots, so
Yeah, just a couple spots.
I
Yeah,
think that's being a bit nitpicky from me, but it's one of those names that it's going to be very difficult, and we could see her skyrocket and go
yeah.
way further. So that's going to be intriguing.
Um, I'll go with Zofia Dudek of Stanford. She is so talented. I think she's probably one of the most naturally talented cross country runners in these rankings, period, regardless of rank. But when you look at what she did, she has a history of injury. She has a history of not being great on the national stage, sometimes better than others. And she was great last fall. I think I want to say 20th at nationals. She had a decent, okay indoor season, and then this past spring just completely dropped off. We don't know why. She just ran at the Polish U23 Championships, but according to World Athletics, she just ran 4:39 for 1,500 meters, placed 10th in that race. So I don't know what to think about her. I think she's insanely talented, and she was running 15:32 back in what, April. So to be like, okay, she's clearly more talented than a heavy portion of these women, but I don't ever really know if she's healthy, what her status is going to be. I don't even know what she's capable of doing right now. It wasn't a great spring track season, so for me, that was just the one name where I was like, I wasn't quite sure about her there.
No, I completely agree. And for me, I'd love to see her get back to it because with the incoming group of freshmen, that's a really nice looking front three. Um,
Yeah.
so if they can key off each other and they're all healthy, like that's going to be a really great push for Stanford. So I'm excited to see how that is. But I do agree she was difficult to rank in the sense that that Polish championships result that's not great.
Yeah.
No matter how you look at it, and like really quite an off day. And I'm gonna try and take it as that because I want to give her the benefit of the doubt
Right.
there. But yeah, it's that's a tough result to look at. But I think where we placed her is I think it's pretty good. So
Cool. I'm glad because I agree with you. In terms of just, and I ask this question to Ben every so often. It's this question of who within our top 50 do you just irrationally like? Just for whatever reason, you don't know why. You're just kind of going through the list and you're just kind of like, I don't know why. I'm just a big fan and I really believe in them. And I just think this runner is going to be great.
Taylor Rowe,
Okay.
um,
Nice. Okay. Yeah.
big Taylor Rowe fan, and I think we've got her where we have for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote this section. I found it really tough because she's come second and fifth at nationals before. She has an indoor national title. And then to see her not quite make it where we thought she was going to was really tough to write about. But then 13th at nationals last year on your home course, for someone that's come in the top five twice, that's not on par with the kind of caliber of athlete we know she is. But I have zero doubt that she's going to get back to. She's one of those athletes that I've really enjoyed watching race. When she won that 3,000 meters, I thought that was fantastic. One of my favorite races to watch from that season. So I'm a big fan, and I think she'll get ready to go again for this fall. So
I sure hope so. Because there's a few women
yes,
like that where it's like it's a tough middle ground. You're not really sure who's as good as where, and she was one of those. There's a handful of individuals where I was like, oh man, were we a little too harsh? And she was one of those where I was like, I don't know if we quite made the right call. And for her, it's not just like okay, she fell back a little bit at last year's national meet. It's more so, her spring season wasn't great. She just
yeah,
wasn't that great. She didn't even make nationals. Something was clearly off, and that's what makes me like a little unsure, and I think why we have her in the spot that we do. For me though, the irrational name who I like, and I don't know if a lot of people will have this, is Victoria Patterson of Columbia. She's a little bit further back on the back end, but I just really like her. I think her first few meets of last fall were a little unexciting, but then she goes over to the Ivy League Championships and gets silver, right? Penn State National Open. She finishes runner up there, only to Celia McCabe. She gets fourth at Northeast Regionals, and then she gets 41st at the national meet. on the track. I think 951 steeplechaser qualifies for the outdoor national meet. There's a very clear, definitive line from last fall after like Paul Short to the rest of the season where she just turns it on. And she's just a kind of a different runner. She's been steady, consistent, constantly improving, has great experience, has thrived in the postseason. So I just like her. I think we ranked her correctly, but I do like just kind of what she could end up being. And I think she could be as high as like 30th by the end of the season.
Yeah, I completely agree. As you said, she kind of turned it on, and it felt like from then on she wasn't putting a foot wrong. Um, and to get to the national meet, and it was 41st, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Fantastic
Yep.
result. And I don't think many people were necessarily expecting that going in. Um, so I thought she was a very pleasant surprise. And it would be very interesting to see if she can carry on that form. And we already saw her qualify for nationals on the track. So I think she's definitely playing into that. And it's going to be very exciting to see if she can crack that All American spot. And I think, as you said, like we could see her as high as 30, 25th type thing. So
Yep.
very exciting athlete.
I'm going to give you a chance to pull up the just missed women's spots right now. I don't know if you already have that open or not, but when I'm looking at
I'll
these,
quickly get that.
perfect. As I'm looking at these, I always wonder every year between the just miss or between the honorable mentions, and you don't have to specify where, but which of these runners do you think not only has the chance to crack our top 50 by the end of the season, but which of these runners do you think could finish the highest, the highest in our rankings by the end of the season?
Um, I know you spoke about this last week. Molly Bourne.
Yeah. Hmm.
I think we've seen it before from her. I mean, 16th place. I know that was, we're looking back a couple years now, but that's a fantastic performance. And as you said, I don't think talent ever goes away.
Yep.
If she's got that ability, I wouldn't be surprised to see her replicate that sort of form. And it's not, the thing is, it's not that she's been bad since then. I think she's been very good, and all her results have been very respectable. Um, Back in the winter cross 2021, I think she was 54th. So knowing how good she can be, I wouldn't be surprised to see her breaking into the rankings. And I think that's the nice thing about preseason rankings is that like everyone gets the chance to better themselves. And
Yep.
as the weeks progress, we're going to see plenty of changes. And I think she is going to be one of those changes. And for someone that's already come in the top 20, I'd love to see her do it again. So yeah, I think for me, she was the one that really stood out as someone that's going to excel, and pretty excited to see where she goes.
You like the Oklahoma State runners today, don't you?
I do, yes. No, big fan of Stillwater.
Perfect. And I respect it. And frankly, that's probably the right answer for this question because she's done it, right? We've seen her get to that point and she's beginning to rally. So I can respect the answer. For me, if I'm just gonna have to, if I have to be different, I think you have the right answer. If I'm gonna be different, I'm gonna go with Mia Cochran, the sophomore from Arkansas. I really like her a lot. I think as a freshman, she was great. She was 12th at SECs, 4th at South Central Region, 64th at Nationals. She was also, I think, 6th at Chili Pepper, 80th at Nuttycombe, and she was 24th at Cowboy Jamboree. For a true freshman, that's a pretty solid resume. She has
Very good.
great high school. Yeah, she's great high school pedigree. It's solid across the board. She was young, but she was shockingly reliable for someone so young. Um, I just like her, and I think she's going to take a natural step up. I think she's going to eventually be an All American. I don't think she's there yet, but I think she could absolutely take that natural growth, rise up, and take to that next level. So I like Cochran. I don't know if you had anyone else in your mind, if how you like Cochran or anything along those lines, but that was my name.
Again, I think going on the kind of underclassmen feel Maeve Styles um,
Yeah. Hmm.
from Penn. So I
Hmm.
think she she was very good. So listing off some of her results here, she was bronze at the Ivy League, fourth at Northeast Regional, and then 60th at Nationals.
Oh, I should correct it.
Which,
That's a typo on my part. She should be. I think it's fourth at Mid Atlantic.
oh yes, of course. what am I saying? They're in my region, so I should know that.
That's my
Um,
fault. That's
yeah,
exactly on
we
my part.
raced them. I don't know what I'm talking about, but yes, Mid Atlantic fourth, and then 60th at the national meet. And again, um, great set of results for an underclassman. And I think, as you said, as they both gain experience, you're going to take that natural step up, and they're two very respectable programs who are going to aid them in that growth. So I think for both of them, I think it's going to be very exciting. Um, and I wouldn't be surprised to see both of them get near that All American range.
I love May Styles. I think she's a great choice. I really like that name a lot. I agree. I think she's going to find natural growth by taking that next step up because you look at what she did on the track as well. Again, 60th at Nationals, but then goes on to run 9:16, then goes on to run 15:55, then goes on to run 33:49, which isn't necessarily the most amazing time for 10K, but still, I thought she was really solid and I thought she was just good across the board. I think she's going to, again, like Mia Cochran, step up into a natural fit. Any more questions here on the women's, any more names you want to talk about, I should say, on the women's side before we move to the men?
Kind of going off the same field, someone that was ranked slightly higher that I think will exceed their ranking is Jane Buckley,
Yeah.
Providence. Um, as far as rookie years go, I know she came in slightly older than most freshmen. Um, she was superb. I don't think she put a foot wrong all season. And to finish 49th in your first nationals, I think that's fantastic. And again, she's one of those that I wouldn't be surprised creeps into that All American conversation. And at the end of the day, she made nationals outdoors her first year too.
Mhm.
15:41 PR for 5K, 13th place. And I mean, to me, what's not to like? And I think I know she did make the rankings, unlike the last two names that we've just discussed. But I think for me, because she's more on the back end, I would see her easily move up potentially 10, 15 spots type thing by the end of the year.
Love that. I love these takes. These are good takes, man. You're
Oh,
coming
thank
to the
you.
podcast with hot takes. I love this. This is good. Excellent. We'll move to the men's side now. Who were the name or names that you thought were maybe robbed a little bit?
um, this one is a very difficult one to talk about because we I think we've discussed it, whether it's in the group chat, previous podcast. Have to Strinzos,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
ninth at nationals before 2021, unbelievable. Um, then last fall wasn't quite replicating that same form at all. Had a really tough year, but from what I gather, I think he was struggling with illness.
Okay.
Um, so he then built into what was a fairly respectable outdoor season. I think it was 28:34, something like that. And I think that was run at Raleigh, and he looked like he had a cracking race. I got to see it in person. Um, and he's one of those guys that loves to be on the front, loves to be pushing the pace, a very aerobic athlete. And I think where we've got him is very respectable, knowing quite how poor his national performance was last fall. But then knowing what he can do, um, it's very difficult to put him there. So for me, he's slightly robbed, if I could say that.
Sure.
But something when researching, I thought this was quite interesting. I don't think it holds much weight,
Okay.
but in the 2021 track season, before going into his ninth place, he finished 19th in the 10,000 meters. He just finished 19th this year.
Okay.
Could he be back?
I'll give you this. I'll give you this. His times were very similar from this past spring to the spring before. Could he be back? Yes. Is he back? Is he now going to be able to catch up to the rest of the NCAA? Is
Yes, yes.
I think the biggest question, and I think you and I don't really know that yet. The good news is that you're now in Philly, or you now go to school in Philly, and so you'll get to see him. I think once or twice.
We
But
will, yes.
yeah. So we're looking forward to your scouting. Although you'll be in the race, you'll have other things to worry about, man. So
Yes, hopefully I'll be up near him, but we'll have to
yeah,
see.
yeah. Hey, and if you are, man, like, hey, if you're up in the races near him, then you'll certainly be in these rankings. That's for sure. So, um,
I sure hope so.
well, and my name here, who I was having a little bit of trouble with, is Cole Sprout. Um, I think just
Yes.
incredibly talented. I mean, so insanely talented. You look at his resume, you're like, where could he have gone wrong? It's like, well, he goes into last fall and he gets injured, partial hamstring tear. So be it. 118th place, not really his fault. It happens. You move on, right? And then indoor nationals, he's getting ready and he gets injured again, leading up to the national meet, can't race. Outdoor nationals, runs a few decent times, but never runs faster than 28:30. He's a 27:40s guy and doesn't make it to nationals. He's still, a top 15 guy, but it's hard to put in stock and be like, hey, this guy's one of the top 5 guys in the country, top 7, whatever it is, when he's just not healthy and he's just not on the national stage. And I want to give him the benefit of the doubt because he's probably more talented than X amount of guys ahead of him. But at some point, you need to actually not just run on the national stage, but then also run well on the national stage. And for me, that's the thing that really catches my attention.
I couldn't agree more. It's one of those scenarios. If he's healthy, then we could see the very best side of him. And I mean, indoors 7:44, phenomenal 3K run. So when he's at the top of his game, he's at the very top, which I think, as you said, gives him kind of we want to be able to give him the benefit of the doubt. But it's very difficult for someone that's had like kind of 2 injuries right on the cusp of when a team's going to need him. So I that being said, I think 118th with a partial hamstring tear is pretty
Not
tough
bad.
performance, I must
Right.
say. Because I remember watching the race and seeing him; he was right up there trying to do what his team needed of him, and unfortunately, it didn't work out. But I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like we want to give him the benefit of the doubt, and I think he's going to be one of those athletes. It wouldn't be surprising to see him move further up our rankings if his body's in check. So
Agreed.
we wish him well, and we wish him that he stays healthy this year because we want to see the very best from him.
Yeah, and plus it's better for us if we get to have big rankings changes and people are in contention and it's all fun. So it's
Exactly.
better for us, that's for sure. Before we move on to the next topic here, I want to get your thoughts. So this is I'm not spoiling anything because we put this ranking specifically as an example on our Instagram page. Kenneth Rooks. We put him at TSR number 42, and people, I
Yeah,
think,
we
were
got some
pretty.
flack for that in the
We got some
comments.
flack,
Yeah.
and you know what? And I'm sitting there being like, now I'm gonna double down. I think of it. I think this is the correct ranking even more so. What were your honest? Guess what? You're not gonna make me upset. But what were your honest thoughts when you're looking at that and going,
Initially, I was like, that's a little harsh, a little. But then, if you think about it, he didn't even make their scoring 7 that went to nationals. If you look at it from that perspective, he wasn't at the meet that we're basing a lot of the rankings off. So I think to have him, oh, it was it 42nd
42nd.
to have him there, I think's pretty good. But then 816 is we're
It is.
talking another level.
It's absurd.
So, but it's going to be one of those. I think if he does race brilliantly in cross, which I wouldn't be surprised to see him do, then you're instantly going to see him slide up all
Oh
the
yeah.
way to the very top. But I think having read everything that's been written and discussed with like our whole team, I think 42nd isn't the worst place to rank him because at the end of the day, he wasn't one of BYU's top cross country runners.
Right.
He didn't even go to the meet. So, not saying I'm not trying to say that he's bad at cross country, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's not some of their guys, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the 7 now. But
Right. Right.
it's something you can't rank him any higher if he's not at the meet. So
Right. Exactly.
um, I think initially it's very much, oh goodness me, why is he ranked there? But then once you slowly start to think about it, it's like, okay, that's a fairly respectable, considering it's a preseason ranking too. So
Right.
that was my thoughts on it. I think it's not a bad spot to have it.
I'm glad you said that. And more as like I'm kind of sitting on it. I think this was it maybe a little on the lower side of where we could have placed him? Sure. Could we have placed him 36th, 37th? Sure. And I think if we did that, maybe people don't get as fidgety about it. But in retrospect, that's only 5 or 6 spot difference. It's really not that big of a difference at all. Um, for me, I look at it like this. Duncan Hamilton ran 8:18 last year, right? I don't even think he wasn't even an All-American. He was barely finishing the season as a top 50 name in our rankings. Barely. Um, you have Parker Stokes, who was an 8:18 guy. He didn't even have that great of a season. Now, granted, I think that might have been something, whether health related, I'm not entirely sure. But you start going back and you look at the history of men in the steeplechase and what they would do on the grass, like mainly over the last 5 or 6 years. It's not a crazy history. Like a lot of these guys who run super fast in the steeplechase, it's not like a lot of them are top tier guys. There's only two, maybe three guys who ended up being all Americans. Like if you look back in the last 5 or 6 years and you look at the top three finishers in each of the steeplechase men's fields at the D1 level, only a small handful of them ended up being all Americans. And when you consider that Rooks was truthfully, from a top 50 perspective, not that great in cross country. He wasn't even top 60 at Nuttycombe or top 50 at Cowboy Jamboree. I think this is the correct placement for him. And I would still believe that even if he goes on to improve his ranking throughout the season, just because based on the information we have, I think this is the right spot. He'll probably prove us wrong. I hope he does.
Yeah,
It's
I
just,
was going to
it's,
say I hope we're proved wrong.
yeah. Um, names that you were maybe looking at and thinking, maybe that's a touch high. I don't know if I would have ranked them quite that high. Is there any names like that?
Um,
Because I can go first if you're still looking for a name.
yeah, no, go ahead.
So, and this is an argument between Ben and I, and Ben and I have had this argument before. We had it on this podcast actually. For me, I can't quite get behind Luke Hauser at 39, and that spot. It's not again. I'm not spoiling anything because we put that on the site, on our Instagram. He's 51st on the national stage before. He's then 42nd on the national stage. He's been 10th at Pac-12s in the 2021 winter season, 27th at Cowboy Jamboree last fall. But then there's other instances where he's not as sharp and he's not as strong. And his 352 mile speed's awesome. 748 3K is really good. But I would have liked him just to maybe be just a touch outside of the top 40, maybe 42nd to 45th. For me, I would have been a little more comfortable with him there. I just think I needed a little more firepower, and that's just me. Ben likes him a lot. I do like Luke Hauser. I don't want to act like I don't like Luke Hauser. He's incredibly talented. I just thought he was the slightest bit high for where he was and what he's done. But now I know I'm just going to regret saying that. I just know I am.
Yes. So the name that I will bring to the table is Dylan Schubert.
Okay.
Um, Fantastic runner, and I think certainly a very cross-focused runner.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's not that I don't think that he can run where his ranking is, because we've seen him do it before. He was
Right.
phenomenal last year. I think my only thing with it is quite difficult to say where he should be if we hadn't seen him race track this year.
Okay.
On the particularly on the like outdoor circuit. So for me, especially knowing how well some of these top guys have been in the tracks season and how fast they've been running, I would potentially move him. We're talking again, it's nitpicky, it's like a couple spots back because I don't think we don't know where he's at right now. But if we're solely basing it on how he was last year, he was unbelievable. And I think that's the joy of it being a preseason ranking. We can have him here, and I think it's a great spot for him. But potentially a couple of spots back. But I want him to prove me wrong very badly. Um, and I want to see him do again what he did last year. Because I think for me, that was probably one of the performances of Nationals. It was unbelievable. Um, and I think it capped off what was a very, very consistent season. And because it started off with a 33rd at the Cowboy Jamboree, which is good. But then
53rd, 53rd.
53rd, sorry,
All good.
which is good. But then you then take that next step and 12th at Nottingham, and
Hmm.
then was it 11th at Nationals. To see him take that next step was fantastic. So I want to see him do it again. But I think not seeing him race track makes it difficult for me to just assess where he is right now. So I don't know if we've got him in the right spot or not.
I think that's a very fair, based strictly on the spring season. I think for Ben and I, why we placed him where we did was he burned us so bad last year. It was just he just
Yeah,
burned us so
yeah,
bad, and the difference is that like he was 53rd at the Cowboy Jamboree, right? And it was that race. It was the beginning of the season. We had never seen him race at like an elite level before, and it was so hard. So we're like, okay, 53rd, sure, seems about right. We're not going to look this too heavily into this. And then he runs, finishes 12th at Nuttycombe. You're like, well, wait, who is this? Like, who is this guy? What version of him are we getting? And then he validates himself at the national meet. And because of that, because I think it was kind of like a big middle finger to us, I was like, you know what? All right, so be it. I think he gets his ranking because of just of how tough it was for us to kind of like
yeah,
rank him initially. So, I very much get it, and I think like it's tough to balance. It's like, okay, well, if someone didn't have an outdoor track season or someone didn't have a great track season, then why are they getting penalized and Schubert's only getting marginally penalized, right? And so
yeah.
it's a hard medium to
And
find.
I think for me as well is I correct me if I'm wrong. I have no idea whether it was a injury or whether it was a red shirt. So to know where he's at fitness wise is
Right.
something that I'd really be intrigued to know.
In terms of guys who you irrationally like, or just names that you're just like, I'm just a big fan. Do you have that name? Do you know who that is? Is there
Yes,
someone who you think
I
is like
do
disrespected?
actually. And I think some people would say that he's quite polarizing, but I
Okay.
like Yassine Abdallah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yes, um, I'm a big fan of his, and I think he is going to outperform his ranking. And I know why we placed him there because again, it's one of those nationals. 32nd place is good, but I think he's better. And as we know, he was very disappointed with that. I'm sure you've seen the video.
Yep. Mhm.
Um, so we saw how good he was that season. Fourth, Joe Piana, bronze medal at SECs. He was unbelievable, and I think it was just a rare kind of off day for him in Stillwater. And then track season indoors, 7:42. He was fantastic. Moving into outdoors, he was pretty good in the 5K, but I would have liked to have seen a bit more from him. And it's difficult to note because he didn't run a 10K apart from the kind of tactical race SECs, which
Right.
I thought he ran brilliantly still. So
Mhm.
it's kind of difficult to note how he's going to transition back into cross, but I'm a big fan of his. I am almost certain that he's going to outperform his rankings, and I'd love to see him do what he's spoken about. So
Excellent.
yes, that is
Uh,
that is my guy on the rankings at the moment.
Fair enough. And you know what? We got a little bit of we were chirped a little bit for his ranking as well. And I get it. I get we look at him and think he should be ranked higher. But you also try to take the middle ground of his resume and you go, but this on paper is where he should be. And I think you and I and really the entire team, we try to take bias out of our rankings. We try to take bias out of what we do and we try to keep it as objectively subjective as we can. I don't know if that makes any
Yes,
sense.
yeah,
And I think he's a perfect example of like how tricky that can be, where it's like I think we got it right on paper, but in actuality, will he probably prove us wrong? Probably. Um, For me,
One thing I'd also, sorry to
no, go
interrupt,
ahead.
one
No,
thing
go
I'd
ahead.
like to add to that is that he is now, from what I gather, going to be with the team during the fall. Because
Okay, yeah.
I don't think he was, from what I've picked up, he wasn't actually with the team for a lot of the fall semester last year.
I don't know. I've heard this. I don't know exactly how that worked or what if that was even true. I don't know. I'm gonna have to look into that. I know what you're saying. I have no idea what that was. That was odd,
So I
right?
don't know. Yeah, it was very odd. From what I gather, he was meeting them at races, that sort of thing. So if he's back with the team, I mean that kind of changes everything.
That's
So
fair.
yeah, I'm excited to see what he does.
I have no idea if that's true. I don't know if that was just like a clip, podcast clip gone viral really wrong. I don't know. So I'm not going to put anything behind it because I don't have any substantiated evidence for it. But I did hear that rumor and I thought that was a little interesting. For me, I'm going to say Acer Iverson. I think he is wildly overlooked. I think it's completely unfair. Everyone at Harvard, I think that at Harvard, the big name right now is Graham Blanks. He's just been killing it. And when I look at what happened last fall, really for the majority of last fall, Acer Iverson was the better cross country runner in like a lot of instances by a lot. He was, let's see, he was sixth at Cowboy Jamboree and he was eighth at Nuttycombe. Like those are outstanding results. Outstanding. Goes back and forth at his conference and regional meet pretty easily. And then he finishes 50th at the national meet. Grant Blanks finishes sixth. And I think from that point, there was this, Blanks has absolutely elevated his fitness since then. But I feel like there's this like almost like disrespect to Iverson where I'm like, do people forget like he was like one of the guys last fall?
Yeah,
And I feel like he's just for whatever reason being overlooked just because of how good Blanks has been.
I completely agree. It's tough that now he's kind of almost playing second fiddle
Mm.
because he was so superb in that early season, and I think the 50th place. I don't I wouldn't for me. I don't hold like huge weight to that. I potentially an off day, knowing how good he was in that early section. Um, but it's one of those. I think this year, if they can get back to it and they're working together, it's so it makes you feel so good when you're running alongside your teammate. And I think as they get to the bigger meets, their team may not potentially qualify as a team. So to see them at nationals working as a duo, it's going to be very exciting. And I think, as he said, unfortunately now he gets overlooked. Um, but for me, they're kind of like a package deal. So
All right.
I'm really excited to see how they work together, especially after seeing like Blanks really elevate himself. He's another person that I'm a big fan of. So I'm very intrigued to see how he does as well. And hopefully Ace is right up there with him.
Well said. Well put. In the just miss portion, I'm going to take a look there. We'll wrap up with this section. When you take a look at the honorable mentions, when you take a look at the just miss portion, when you're going through these names, who's the name that you're saying that guy's going to be the highest ranked runner we have in our top 50 by the end of the season?
Um, I will agree with what Ben said last week.
Okay.
Colin Solomon.
Yep.
Um, I really think he was really good on the track.
Mm-hmm.
Like
He was.
he was really good. His range was really quite scary. Um, and I think I thought what you guys noted last week was really important. The idea that when Nico Young went straight to NAU, he had that semester where they were able to just train and adapt. And I think Solomon wasn't given that. And for him to jump straight into cross, that as a true freshman, that's a pretty big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And he ran pretty respectively throughout. But I think we're really going to see like a kind of new runner on the cross side from him. And because I don't think, for me, certainly, I wasn't expecting him to be quite as good as he was come
Right.
outdoor season. So And I think also we saw kind of a bit of a new side of racing from him. He was very, I thought he was pretty assertive during outdoor season. And for someone as young as he was to just like, he kind of just grabbed the ball by the horns, and I thought it was fantastic. So I'm hoping Cross, he's going to have that confidence that he had in outdoor season and kind of propel into that kind of all American range. And he's got a lot of teammates that are going to help him do that. So I, for one, agree with Ben, and I'm pretty excited to see how he does.
Fair enough. And I think again, that's again what you chose is the right answer. That is probably the right answer. Looking at his natural talent, his pedigree, what he did in the spring, that's probably right. That's probably the right answer. So I don't blame you. I think that's probably who I expected you to say. I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to just say a group of runners. I think the highest ranked runner is going to be a freshman. I think it's going to be a true freshman. I think it's going to be either Tyrone Gores, Cole Matheson. I think it's going to be Simeon Birnbaum. I think it's going to be Leo Young, or I think it's going to be Connor Burns, or Lex Young. I mean, Lex Young is spoiler in our rankings, but I think it's one of those guys because I think I look at what this group did during their high school scene. They were so beyond elite. I mean, the times that they were running over 2 miles. I mean, two guys broke the 5K record, national record previously held by Galen Rupp. I mean, the things that these guys were doing were so insane. I think Tyrone Gores is perfect for the long distance side. I think Matheson was the cross country national champion at Champ Sports. You just go down the list. It's so impressive. I just think by general numbers, by the way I look at it, one of these guys is going to be a stud. I'm talking like top 20 stud. I don't think it's going to be many of them, but I think at least one of them is going to be an absolute stud. And I will bank on the stats of that to say one of them will be it. If I had a guess, I mean, we have Lex ranked, but if I had a guess, if it was anyone else, maybe Tyrone Gores. But I really don't have an
I
idea with that.
I couldn't agree more with that pick. I think
Perfect.
to run a 10K on track in
Mm-hmm.
high school, that's a pretty big deal.
Yep.
And to run it as well as he did, that was a performance that kind of blew my mind. Like running a 10K in college is hard enough, but to
Right.
do it at like that young level, he has no experience over the distance, and that was a brilliant performance. So for me, knowing how well he can perform at that kind of longer distance,
Yep.
um, gives me the edge over the others. And I think the others are fantastic. We've seen how fast they can go 800 all the way up to
Right.
5K. But I think
Right.
for me, it's a big step up from 5K cross to 10K cross. So I think knowing what Gores can do over that distance is certainly going to help him. So for me, I agree with you. I think he's a fantastic pick.
I'm glad I'm not just in my own head, just making stuff up. So thank you for validating me. Is there any other name before we wrap up here? Like, you know what? I just think this guy needs some attention. Is there any other name? Or are you good?
I think the only name that I'm thinking of at the moment is Aaron Ross Harris.
Yeah. Hmm.
Where he is on our rankings, I think is good. But then you got to remember he did just beat Kai Robinson um, at the World Cross Country Championships,
Yep.
and then his outdoor season has been pretty impressive. 13:27, and then
Yep.
3:36.
Yep.
Um, two huge performances. New coaching setup going to be very interesting to see how he adapts. Um, and will we see the kind of Mike Smith effect? Will he completely change
Right.
him as a runner? We no idea. But he's certainly got the talent there to excel. Certainly where we put him, and I think he'll definitely better his position that he ran last year at nationals. I think he was 26, so I think he'll certainly exceed that. And I think he's going to be kind of the um, key cog in the new NAU team. So I'm excited to see him as well.
Yeah, he's a fun name. He's just a fun name. What not just because of how good he is and how much he's improved, but because of what he could do for that Northern Arizona program. For me, I just want to quickly shout out Habatam Samuel Caleta of New Mexico. We don't know anything about him other than he's run 13:13 and 27 20, I believe, over 10K. He was 17th at World XC, so ahead of Robinson, ahead of Aaron Laceras. Um, we think he's coming to New Mexico. We don't know that for sure because now, since the coaching change that happened there, a little bit of craziness. Is he coming? We don't know. How good will he be? But his raw talent, just as good as anyone else, um, will be very interesting to see if he A, does come, and B, how well he does. So that's my only other name there.
Yes, I think I couldn't agree more. It's going to be very intriguing to see how his ability um, kind of matches up with everyone else. Talent wise, we know he, if anything, exceeds everyone in the NCAA at the moment.
Yeah,
But it's kind of it's a different setup out here. So it's going to be certainly, as I mentioned, intriguing to see how
yeah,
that transition period for him goes.
fair enough. Finn, you have been phenomenal, both on this podcast, both in our Slack channel, both on writing. We thank you so very much. Do you have any parting words before we go?
Um, Thank you very much for having me. As you probably gathered, I'm pretty excited to see
Yeah,
everyone race. I think I'm just excited at the season in general.
for sure.
Um, so, yes, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, dude. You were great. We really appreciate it. Ben might have to start watching his co-host position now, ever since you just came on. So, but sincerely, thank you so much. And that's all I got. I'll talk to you later.
Of course, thank you.